Now, we're going through our various half guard positions, and so far we've been looking at the idea that when we work from half guard, one of the biggest challenges we're always going to have to work against is our opponent's body weight coming down chest to chest, him taking an underhook and a crossface, just like so. Now, whenever you're in this situation, it always feels like the world is stacked against you. You've got a lot of body weight on top of you. You've usually got a lot of discomfort and immobility because of the crossface. And at the same time, you can't really do anything about it because your opponent's locked in an underhook on the far side and his head's in good position. You have a very hard time pommeling your arm back into a better position than this. Let's understand that whenever we find ourselves in this somewhat disadvantageous position, your best friend in these circumstances is always going to be a strong elbow escape. Now, the elbow escape is traditionally associated with escapes from pins, but half of an elbow escape in a half guard situation will immediately turn this game around. Something which I always press upon my students is a saying I often make use of. Whenever you find yourself in half guard bottom in a disadvantaged position like this, you are always one elbow escape away from victory. In this situation, I'm going to start by taking my elbow close to my training partner's knee. I'm going to take my foot up here towards my training partner's knee. I can't have my foot all the way down by the ankle. It's so easy for Mateus to pommel his leg and then from here start going into a position where it's very likely he's going to pass. So we make sure we put some tension in our leg and bring our foot over his knee. So when he begins pommeling, there's no way now he's going to be able to pommel out from this position. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create some space. So we're going to have the confidence to unlock the triangle of our legs. We come in just like so. My intention is to go knee to knee with my training partner. The only way I can do this is by inverting my knee so that my foot is higher than my knee. If your foot is roughly the same height as your knee, you'll never successfully bring your knee through in front and complete that elbow escape. So it's so important we bring our foot high, our knee low, and point our knee down at the down at the floor. And now, as a result, I can easily touch my knee and elbow together and form a useful frame that puts my knee right there in the pocket of my training partner's hip. Now, understand something. The moment you get your knee in front of the hip, your opponent's crossface, which was such a good weapon for him just a few seconds ago, is now becoming a liability. I cannot stress enough the crucial importance of the position of this knee and the hip, because now any movement outwards in this direction will create a situation where you can turn that crossface into a liability and start to go to attack your opponent. Switch positions. Sometimes in a beginner's class, you'll see someone who has no knowledge of jiu-jitsu whatsoever. And because they have no knowledge, you'll see them make a terrible, terrible mistake inside a closed guard, where they'll go forward and try to headlock someone inside a closed guard, and they think they're doing something good in this position. Obviously, this is a complete beginner's mistake, and Mateus could easily turn a situation like this against me. There's all manner of arm locks, sweeps, all kinds of things he could use against me. Now, ultimately, what we're doing in this situation is from half guard, we're essentially turning what was a good half guard position into exactly that rookie mistake by performing an elbow escape. As Mateus goes to perform the elbow escape and comes through, we actually find ourselves now in that exact situation we were just talking about, where now I've headlocked my opponent, and now that crossface that was so useful before has now become a liability, and Mateus can use it to attack me. That's why we always stress this idea that when you're in one of these disadvantageous half guard bottom situations, you're always one elbow escape from attacking away from attacking your opponent. So that's always what we're looking for. Here's Mateus in a good position, and he has a great crossface, and everything is, the ball's in my court now. I've got to do something to respond to this. This is a great position for him and a terrible one for me. So we've got to do something about it fairly rapidly. We bring our elbow inside the knee, we push our hips out, my knee and elbow touch, and as a result, I can get my knee right there in the pocket of my training partner's hip. This enables us to straighten our body out and move our hips all the way through and start going into a fine attacking position, just like so. Off this position, it's an easy thing for us to control our training partner's body and hold in here and control my training partner's arm. One more time. Here, my opponent's crossface is a very, very useful weapon to use against me. But just the simple single elbow escape, shifting my hips out, inverting my knee, bringing knee and elbow together, means that from here, we can now shift our hips and find ourselves in an incredible attacking position. Now what I'm going to do is just put my hand here on my training partner's lat muscle. One on this side, one on this side. And I'm going to start an action of drawing my knee in towards my chest, just like so. Now, I'm going to start lifting my training partner. In response, he's going to have to put his feet out wide for base, otherwise he'll fall over. When I see that, my left foot finds my training partner's far foot, and one motion, we cut his foot away, and we end up now in more or less the same position that we were once ourselves in, and ready now to start our passing game. I'm just going to show you this from a different angle. From here, Mateus finds himself in an excellent attacking position. This crossface is a very, very useful weapon for him to control the movement of my head and pin me to the floor. But understand something, as intimidating as that crossface is, if we can just perform one successful elbow escape, you can turn this into a useful weapon into a liability. So we bring our elbow in, we bring our foot up to his knee, we shift our hips, and we start the action of inverting our knee so my foot is much higher than my knee. This is going to make it very easy for me to elbow escape and put my knee in front of his hip. Now I need to shift my hips so my right foot touches the floor and we come out in this direction. Now that crossface is a real liability. So I hook over the top. So if he tries to pull his crossface out, it's a difficult thing. Now from here I start a lifting action that forces him to base out. Then my foot finds his ankle and we sweep away his base of support, and we now find ourselves in an excellent position to begin the passing game. Let's go over the key elements to this elbow escape. It's absolutely worth our while to perfect this movement because this is something you're going to be using almost every day you train. Half guard is one of the most common positions in the sport, and when someone gets a good half guard on top of you, of course they're going to be looking to get chest-to-chest contact, a strong crossface, and an underhook on the far side. That's what suits their purposes very, very well. We're going to show it from a different angle now. Everything starts off with our opponent in good position. He's got the underhook in place. So first things first, the elbow escape. Our hands come in close, my elbow goes inside his knee, and my foot comes all the way up to his knee, just like so. As a result, I can shift my hips out and start the action of inverting my knee. Even when he brings his knee forward, it's an easy thing for us here to go through and score that initial knee position in the pocket of his hip. Now I shift my hips out to the side and I collect my training partner's arm, lock it in nice and tight. Now, once we get an angle on our training partner, we start a lifting action that gets him up and hopping. If he doesn't put his knee up, it's a very easy lift and cut down to the floor. So your opponent is going to have to base out. Look how I use my foot right there in my training partner's heel, in his shin, and as a result, as I lift with my right foot, I can sweep away with my left foot. And now we get a nice transition down to the mat where we can start our passing game. The key elements that I want you focusing on are a good, clean elbow escape. I'm just going to demonstrate it solo from here. The key element is that we shift our hips out and we start the process of inversion so that my knee points down to the floor, my foot is considerably higher than my knee, and I form an elbow to knee frame, which enables me to go through, elbow escape, put my knee in his hip, and then come out to an advantageous angle where I can start lifting my opponent to the floor while cutting away the second leg. So once again, I think everyone would agree that Mateus has a better position right now than I do. He's got good chest-to-chest pressure, fine crossface, and a strong underhook. And as a result, it's pretty easy for him to pin my head and shoulders and start the passing game. From here, we're always going to start by shifting our hips out, getting our knee inside our training partner's elbow, and inverting our knee. Even when Mateus's knee is well forward and tight, it's pretty easy for us to get that angle and bring elbow and knee together. The moment my knee emerges through, I'm looking to get my knee to the pocket of his hip. Be precise here. Don't just settle for having your knee anywhere. Make sure the knee goes into the pocket of the hip. Now from this position, we come up and capture our training partner's arm. We start an action of lifting. How you lift is very important. Don't just try to lift from wherever you are. Even though Mateus and I weigh roughly the same, Mateus is perhaps a little lighter. If Mateus's weight is down my body, you'll see it's very hard for me to lift him. So my first action is to bring my knee to my chest. I can even use my hands to assist. What I want to do is to bring Mateus's head up to my head, like so. And it's that lifting action which now makes it easy for me to get him hopping. Now I find my training partner's foot with my foot, and I cut away the foot so that we end up in a fine passing position down on the floor. Used in this fashion, one simple elbow escape can transform in a matter of seconds a punishing, tough position for the guy on top and turn it to my advantage. With our feet on the inside, we can use a simple sumigaeshi sweeping action, cut away his base of support, and get a complete reversal from what seemed like a very unpromising start. Let's start to look now at a second way that we can use sumigaeshi, what we often refer to as a hook sweep in jiu-jitsu, as a method to overturn someone. But this is a very different form of sumigaeshi. This is what I often refer to as a shoulder crunch sumigaeshi. This is a variation of sumigaeshi that I invented many, many years ago, and my students excel in this move. It works equally well with and without a gi. Just as we worked before, the big theme that I want you guys working on is the idea that anytime someone has us in a punishing half guard passing position like this one, you are always one elbow escape from being able to attack this opponent and not just get out of this position, but carry the attack to them. And it's all predicated on this idea of a strong elbow escape. We get our elbow inside the knee, we shift our hips out, and from here, we bring elbow and knee together. The inverted knee position makes it easy to go through and get our knee here to our opponent's hip. The moment our knee goes to the hip, this crossface, which was such a good thing just a few seconds ago, is now a liability to our opponent. So from here, look how we push away on our training partner and we get our foot underneath. Now, this time a little different. I'm going to ask you guys to take your wrist up here to your training partner's shoulder. We're going to take our second wrist here and lock our hands palm to palm or wrist to wrist around our training partner's shoulder. So if Mateus went to pull his arm out of here, it would be a very difficult thing. What we're trying to do is to crunch Mateus's shoulder down to our chest, hence the name a shoulder crunch sumigaeshi. So when he tries to pull away from us, it's a shockingly difficult thing to do. Now we're going to make a small shifting motion so that I can take my left foot and hook that in as a second hook, like a butterfly situation. As we correct our hips, we're now going to use our two knees to draw our training partner forward and bring his head up close to our hip. This creates a situation where we can start lifting and off-balancing. It takes our opponent over and creates an ideal situation for us to move across the body and into a solid pin. Very often, your opponent will base out with his legs because, let's face it, no one wants to be the guy that gets swept from bottom position. So they will often base their legs out and will employ a similar sweeping action to take away our opponent's base of support. So once again, Mateus is in what I think everyone would agree is a very good top half guard position. He's got his crossface set, he's got his underhook set, and his weight is well centered chest to chest. And as a result, I'm finding it pretty difficult to get any kind of serious offense from this position. All that will change with one elbow escape. Remember our mantra. If you're in a bad position like this, you are one elbow escape away from being able to attack your opponent very successfully. So never lose heart in this position. Always have confidence in your ability to elbow escape and turn it around from here. So we shift out, we invert our knee, and we bring our foot in. From this position, I come over the top and we shoulder crunch. So when Mateus goes to pull away, it's not going to be an easy thing to do. Now from here, I shift, get my left foot in. From here, look how I bring my knees up to my chest, and as a result, we can start a lifting action. As Mateus reaches out with his left foot for the mat, we're in a good position now to take our foot and cut away his base of support, ending up in a fine position to do our own passing. Again, from a different angle. Here, we start off, my opponent in a good half guard passing position. As always, we start with that elbow escape, where we shift our hips out and invert our knee, so that we can bring our knee inside to the pocket of the hip. As we straighten our body out, we now go into the shoulder crunch and lock our training partner's shoulder tight to our hips. This is going to make it relatively easy for us to take our second foot and hook it in as a butterfly hook. Now from here, I want to bring his head towards my head. So my two knees come in towards my chest, and we get him up in the air. From this position, we start a lifting action. As he reaches for the floor, facing out, we take our foot to his foot, and look how I cut my training partner's foot away from the mat for a nice turnover, straight down to the floor, and into a strong passing position on top. This shoulder crunch is a very, very useful method of sweeping people. It's based on the idea of keeping his head and turning it in the same direction as the sweep. An old cliche of combat sports is that where the head goes, the body tends to follow. And this is a good example of this principle being used in operation. It's a very, very useful way of employing sumigaeshi, because it means we have a strong sumigaeshi with a conventional method to one side and a shoulder crunch method to the other. I'm going to demonstrate what I mean by that right now. We've seen that from an elbow escape situation, as we come out to the side and we put our knee in our training partner's hip and realign our body with his. In the previous move, we came up high, just like so. We shifted our body out and we employed a sumigaeshi action to get the man lifting over to my left-hand side. And as a result, we were able to cut away our training partner's foot and put him down. Now, if I feel Mateus strongly resisting the sweep to my left, I will now employ a shoulder crunch and change direction to the right. So we get a beautiful multi-directional left-right sweeping sequence using sumigaeshi. One side with a conventional grip and the other with the unconventional grip, the shoulder crunch. Used in this way, you can get a beautiful left-right off-balancing sequence from one side to the other, which will make you a very, very effective bottom half guard player, even when your opponent has this dominating form of grip from top position. We're looking at the incredible value that a strong elbow escape can add to us as the bottom player, even in situations where our opponent has what most people consider to be a dominant passing position. So I'll take it on the other side this thing. Mateus is in a half guard situation, and he has crossface, he has underhook, he's got good head position and good knee position. As a result, I feel like there's not a lot I can do just from here. Yes, it's true. This is a dominant position, not a completely dominant, but a fairly dominant position for your opponent on top. But as we say, have faith, have heart, and understand that a simple elbow escape from this position will turn this annoying crossface into a liability which you can use to attack your opponent. So we've seen the idea behind the single elbow escape, where we bring our elbow inside our training partner's knee. We start the action of shifting and inverting our knee so that we can bring knee and elbow together and put our knee in the pocket of our training partner's hip. And if we can do that, we can now align our body and create a situation where that crossface becomes something of a liability. Now, so far, we've been looking at the idea of creating a sumigaeshi type action. When I shift my hips out, I bring my knees in towards my chest and I bring his head up to mine. So we're more or less ear to ear. And as a result, we can start a lifting action. Now, if my opponent has skills and he frees this arm and steps over my tripping foot, steps over, and from here, it's going to be difficult for me to complete the sweep as we did as we initially performed it. Whenever I see this happening, I'm going to take my free hand, in this case it's my right hand, and I'm going to get a scoop grip here on my training partner's leg. This is going to enable me to put my second foot on the floor and then shift my weight in such a way his weight comes out in this direction. We now have a scoop grip on the leg and a leg, my shin, underneath my opponent. His hands will be down on the mat just like so. Now we're going to take our free foot and we're going to catch our training partner's shoelaces with our shoelaces. And as a result, I can bend my training partner's knee, just picking it up, and I can place his knee down on the floor. Once we get to that position, we heist up to a hand on the mat, just like so. My head is now higher than my opponent's head, and my head is higher than his hips, so that we're in a very relaxed position to work from. I put my foot on the floor, and I hit a simple hip heist. Now we have a height advantage over our opponent. Many of your opponents will stay exactly where they are. If this should happen, it's an easy thing for me to run my opponent down, get to the second leg, and put him down. Other of your opponents will come up off the floor, and you'll end up in a position like so. When we see this, we're going to walk around behind our training partner so we get closer to his ankle. I'm going to place my foot just outside of his ankle, and as a result, it's a very easy thing for us to walk him down to the mat. Once again, we start off in a half guard situation. Most people would agree this is a dominating position for the opponent, and he's got a very good chance of passing from here. So we're going to go into a simple elbow escape where we start shifting our hips out. We bring elbow and knee together, and we get our knee right there in the pocket of his hip. Now we start bringing our knees in towards our chest, and as a result, we can get him up into the air. But for whatever reason, we lose control of his hand here, and now we find ourselves in a situation where we get a scoop grip on our training partner's leg. I put my free foot on the floor, and I take everything in this direction, just like so. Now I take my foot, and my shoelaces go to his shoelaces. And as a result, I can pick his leg up by pushing my left foot forward and my right foot out. That puts his knee on the mat. I come up, propped up on my hand like so. Because my head is high and my body is upright, it's relatively easy for us to heist up and get to this good position. If he elects to stay on a knee, no problem. We just go straight in, pull the knee, and sit him down. If my opponent's a good athlete and comes up off the floor, then we're going to come up ourselves and we're going to walk around behind our opponent. We block the foot, reach down, lift, and place our man down on the mat. In this way, we can use this scooping grip to come up from bottom position with a half butterfly guard and put even strong athletic opponents down to the mat. We're going to have a look now at a form of half guard which I often encourage my students to use. This is a scoop half butterfly guard. Let's just quickly understand the terminology, scoop. Why do I use the word scoop? Where does that come from? If you just take a standing position. In the sport of jiu-jitsu, very often we make use of what we call underhooks, where I go underneath my training partner's arm, and everyone knows the term an underhook. For the obvious reason, we go under the arm, hook onto the shoulder, and then we have an underhook in place. Okay. When I have my students go to grab legs, just lie down. You could say this too is an underhook, right? My arm goes underneath the leg and hooks on. But I never use the word underhook in these situations. I use the word scoop. The general rule is that we scoop legs and we underhook arms. Why? Why do I use the word scoop? Why don't I just call this an underhook as well? Well, it's ambiguous, okay? If in a situation where I'm calling to an athlete to make grips, if I say, in situations like so, if we use the word underhook to cover both arms and legs, and I call for an underhook in this situation, it's unclear to the student whether he should go here or here. But if I call out the word scoop, it's completely unambiguous. That tells him here. And if I call out underhook, it's also unambiguous. It means here. But if I use underhooks interchangeably for arms and legs together, and at this critical moment I call out underhook right side, it's not clear what he should be grabbing. Should he grab here or should I grab here? Because we use the same word for both. That's why I always use different words for gripping the legs and the arms. So there's no ambiguity. When I call out right side scoop grip, that's what you want. When I call out right side underhook, that's what we want. Okay? So rather than call this an underhook half butterfly guard, let's refer to it as a scoop so that when you're being coached or you're coaching someone else, there won't be any ambiguity as to what your command is. Your students or your friends will know exactly what you're calling for. We're going to look now at one of the most effective movements out of half guard bottom, which is to work with a tight waist grip on our opponent and get a scoop grip on the leg. I often use this at fundamentals level because it is a very simple way to reverse people. It's highly efficient mechanically, and later on it will lead into many of our favorite leg locking attacks from bottom position. But in fundamentals level jiu-jitsu, most of the leg locks we look at later on are illegal and won't be the topics of this particular video series. So let's have a look at it, why it's such an important part of our game, and then start you getting sweeping people from bottom half guard. Okay, we're going to start off half guard, and this time we're going to have a tight waist grip. So we are underneath our opponent's arm with an underhook, and we're going across the waist and in like so. Our second hand in this situation is going to go through and take a scoop grip on our training partner's leg, just like so. Okay, so if we started in a half guard situation like so, we're going to go through, take our tight waist, and then from here, I'm going to get an elbow deep scoop grip on my training partner. As a result, I can now start turning actions and get my opponent's knees separated one from the other, just like so. Now, as a result, it's an easy thing for me to pommel my right foot underneath my training partner's right foot in this fashion. And as a result, we can start lifting until my left foot can go under his right knee. We now have a half butterfly guard and the scoop grip in place. And as a result, we can start off balancing people out to the side and getting their weight up like this. I now take my second foot, which is currently being unused, and I go shoelace to shoelace on my training partner so that I can put his knee down to the mat. And as a result, it's a pretty easy thing for us to come up heisting and hunting for that second leg. If he elects to stay knee down on the floor, it's an easy thing to buckle him down to the mat. If my opponent elects to go up to a foot, I generally recommend that you also go up to your feet. You put your foot in behind his as a blocker, and we put the man straight down to the mat. So we can often make use of this simple method of getting to a situation where you have a scoop grip on one leg and a butterfly hook with the other. Just on a mechanical level, just standing over me. Just understand that just mechanically, this is an incredibly strong grip. Notice that my scoop grip is above the knee. Notice that my second foot, there in his, the pocket of his knee, just let's switch the angle. This is just an incredibly strong grip that enables you to dominate the space between your training partner's knees. My scoop grip means that if he tries to bring his two knees together, it's very, very difficult. So the space between his knees is easily dominated by your arm and leg. And as a result, we can now easily take our second foot and put our training partner's knees down to the mat. Now we just come up and heisting, and we find ourselves in the perfect situation to drop people down to the floor. Okay, so it's an incredibly strong mechanical method of controlling the space between your training partner's knees. And it's readily available from half guard anytime you've got that tight waist grip. So changing our angle, we start off with an underhook here. We go in and get the tight waist. Initially, I have an inside hook with my leg, just like so. It's okay for you to have a triangle with your legs, that's fine, but it's not essential. Now, I go in, I get the elbow deep grip. So the essential features of our initial grip are scoop grip, elbow deep, tight waist on the far hip, and an inside hook with our legs. When Mateus goes to move around from here, it's a very good controlling position. Now we use our legs to generate some momentum, and that momentum will carry us around to the other side. Now I use my rear leg, in this case my right foot, to hook underneath my training partner's leg and create a lifting action that feeds the second leg across. Now from here, we have the scoop half guard position. Now it's a simple matter of using our free leg to put his knee down to the mat and putting him down to the floor for the reversal. This is an incredibly useful way to employ this scoop grip combined with a half butterfly action to dominate the space between your opponent's knees and score good reversals from bottom half guard. Now, we're going to look further into this idea of using scoop grips from half guard situations to dominate the space between our training partner's knees and start getting reversals. The variation we're going to look at now starts going close towards a very specialized form of half guard, often referred to as a deep half guard. It's not a true deep half guard position, and I don't think it's a good idea to go too far down the deep half guard alley in a fundamentals program. It's a wonderful position. I often make use of it, but at fundamentals level, we'll stay away from deep half guard. But it does go in that general direction. It will help you when you go to learn deep half guard later on. The idea is that we're going to use the scoop grip not to come up from bottom position and knock our opponent down with a scoop grip, but rather to rotate around our training partner's legs and go for reversals or even for our opponent's back from that position. So we're going to start off just like we did previously in a half guard situation where we have the underhook and a tight waist. And at the same time, I have an elbow deep scoop grip and I have an inside hook with my legs. So that when Mateus goes to pull away from me in a situation like this, it won't be easy. You've got excellent control of your opponent's body. In addition to having control of your opponent's body, you have an ability to whip your legs and bring his body weight forward, using your left leg as a pendulum to move his body weight forward and get weight onto the hands and then start a movement so we face in the same direction as our training partner. Now, from here, we've seen the idea of taking our foot and pommeling it underneath our training partner's foot. In the previous move, we went here to a scoop position with the arm and a half butterfly with the other. We're going to go further this time and bring our legs all the way down to the ankle. And I'm going to focus on bringing Mateus's hands to the floor in the direction that I'm pointing. So watch my left leg lift out in this direction. Once we get to this position, we're going to start going into the attacks that we're going to be looking at shortly. This is going to require us to change the position of our scoop grip from one leg to the other. I'll show this from different angles very shortly so you'll get to see this, but let's have a look first from this angle. So, from bottom position, we have our tight waist, we have our scoop grip, we have our inside hook with the legs, and as a result, we have a pendulum leg that can start to move my training partner's body weight around. From this position, watch my right hand. It's currently a scoop grip on my training partner's left leg. I'm going to change it to the right leg. So we've just changed our scoop grip from one leg to the other. Now we get our feet in, as we talked about previously. My left foot goes down to the ankle, and look how I lift forward in the direction that my feet are pointing. And as a result, we're now in a position where we can start to come up to our base. I'm going to go around my training partner's leg, put my knee up behind my training partner, and we now find ourselves in the perfect position to go straight around the corner and onto our training partner's back. So you now have a situation where you are underneath your opponent, and now you're in one of the best attacking positions in the sport. You're threatening your training partner's back and ready to start scoring from there. So once again, I start off with a left arm tight waist, a right arm scoop grip. From here, we have the inside hook with our right leg, and everything starts turning, so I'm facing to the east, but end up facing to the west. Now my scoop grip changes from one leg across to the other. My feet hook in, and my right foot passes everything to my left foot. From here, I bring everything well forward. Initially, my knee comes up behind his ankle, and as a result, I'm able to get my head higher than his and immediately go through and start scoring at my training partner's hips and back. From a situation like this, it won't be so hard for us to start putting hooks in and going forward to score. Alternatively, in situations like this, we can come up in front of an opponent and turn it into a double leg reversal. So, we start off as we did before. We go around the corner and switch our arm from one leg to the other. We make a pass off with our feet. This time, when I come up, my knee is in front of my training partner. And as a result, I can go in on my training partner's leg, my hand goes across to the second leg, and we start driving our training partner down to the mat to score a reversal down on the floor. Whether you come up behind your opponent to take the back, or whether you come up in front of your opponent to hit a double leg and reversal, I leave that up to you. Once again, we're here, tight waist, scoop grip, inside grip with the leg. Now, turn around the corner, a grip here, a switch from one leg across to the other. We put our foot underneath and we pass his foot from one to the other. Then a simple lift in this direction gets his weight onto his hands and creates a situation where I can come up with my knee in front. Initially, I'm here on my training partner's leg, elbow deep around his knee, and look how my hand goes across to the second leg, and we start a running action across my training partner to put him down to the mat. This is an excellent way for us to score reversals. Now, there's a third form of reversal, which I often make use of in this position. I'll show it to you now, where we come up with a single leg. The start is exactly the same. Elbow deep scoop, inside hook with my right leg, tight waist grip with my left arm. As Mateus goes to hold on to me and cross-face me, etc. from this position, it's not easy. And it's very easy for us to start that turning action that forces his weight onto his hands. Now from here, we make the same switch here to the opposite leg. We use the pass off, where I lift, pass his foot to the second leg, and bring everything around the corner. This time, I feel it's going to be difficult for me to get across to the second leg. So from here, we're going to pick up our training partner's leg and bring it up off the mat. We're going to stand up and find ourselves in this fine attacking position. He's up on one leg. We get a hold of our training partner's second leg, and then I'm just going to step in, 1, 2, and drive my training partner straight down to the mat for the reversal. Once again. Tight waist and scoop grip. Everything goes around the corner. I start facing to the east and come across the face to the west. Switching my grip, performing the pass off, coming up to my base, and this time look how I pick our training partner's leg up, just like so. Now from this position, I step my foot inside his, back step, and drive straight down to the mat for the reversal. In this way, we get 3 very effective ways of reversing the half guard position. One goes towards our training partner's back, one goes into a double leg from the front, and if our opponent's weight moves away from us, we come up and away with a single leg and put our opponent down with a foot sweep. In this way, you've got 3 beautiful finishes out of essentially the same start. Now, let's focus on some of the small details that's going to get you some success working with scoop half butterfly guards. Let's look first at the notion of inside hooks with the legs. We're going to have Mateus lined up here, and we're going to show the idea of working with our legs. Typically, when we have tight waist grips, most of the time we work with outside hooks on the leg, like so. So my outside leg, in this case my left leg, hooks over Mateus's leg, and we hold in this position. But when we work with the scoop series, we actually work with the inside hook here. And we have the choice between initially locking a triangle or just holding like so. The key element here is I want to make sure my foot comes up to my training partner's knee. I don't want my foot dangling down here by his ankle. Now it's very easy for my opponent to pommel his leg free and get into a good passing position. So we want to make sure we come up here, ankle to knee, just like so. It's okay to initially hold with the triangle when you just go to hold someone, but it's important to understand when it's time to actually move, you must be able to use that top leg like a pendulum to generate motion. So you're going to have unlocked legs. At the same time, as my left leg moves, you must resist the temptation to extend both legs so that Mateus can pommel out and start passing. It's very important we never lose that tension where my leg back heels into my training partner's knee and holds tight. And from here, we start that action of using the left leg as a pendulum while the right leg maintains its tension in the back of my training partner's knee. And as a result, we now end up in this good position. Now, the next phase is the idea of a pass-off, where we have to use one foot to pass his foot to the other. The good news is, when you first go to make contact with your opponent, you can hook naturally into the shape of our training partner's ankle. And as a result, it's pretty easy for us to pass the foot. When we go to a scoop, half butterfly guard, we scoop to the knee. When we want to use this as a reversal, we come all the way down to the ankle, like so. The good news is, because you're operating at the end of the lever, it's very easy for you to manipulate your opponent's leg position. Understand that we have to create what we call a sticky hook. That's where our foot points back so our toes come back towards our own knee. I don't want to have a relaxed foot. Then Mateusz can slide off my foot and easily escape. So it's very important that our foot have tension in it. The toes retract towards our own knee. And as a result, it forms a sticky hook where even when he tries to kick his leg free, our feet stick together. Again, if my foot is relaxed, it's very easy for him to escape his foot. So we want to make sure we hook our shoelaces and our toes retract towards our own knee. This forms an exceptionally sticky hook, whereas our opponent goes to pommel free, it's very, very difficult. The only way he can pommel is forwards, and that actually helps us in what we're trying to do in this situation. Okay, so once again, the key details. First, we want to use an inside hook. And even though it's permissible to initially lock a triangle for holding purposes, at some point you're going to have to unlock your legs. When I use my top leg, it's important we keep the tension in the bottom leg. We can't have two relaxed legs where your opponent can easily pommel out. Instead, there's tension in the bottom leg while the top leg moves in this fashion here. Then in the pass-off, we make sure that we use our foot as a sticky hook with our toes retracted so that we can easily pass to either the knee or the ankle. And then from here, we get our moves to work. We know that if we can move our opponent's body forward and come around the corner, we're going to be in fine position now to run our opponent down using any one of the reversals we saw. These small details in leg position make a big, big difference in your ability to successfully execute these excellent moves from scoop half butterfly situations. Now, we've been looking at the idea of getting in control of the bottom half guard position. The big enemy that we're fighting against is our opponent's body weight. How are you going to manage his body weight on top of you when he's past one of your legs and it's in a more or less chest-to-chest situation? Gets even worse when he's got dominant upper body grips, cross faces, underhooks, etc., etc. Our contention is that whenever we lose upper body battles for grips, we've got to go down to the lower body, start getting our opponent out of balance, downstairs, and then come back upstairs to re-win the upper body battle. In all of this is the key theme that managing your opponent's body weight is a huge part of your success or failure from bottom half guard. If he can get his body weight chest to chest on top of you and flatten you out, you're going to have a very hard time being effective, and he's going to have a very easy time passing your half guard. So our whole thing essentially comes down to weight management. Where's his head? Is it parked right over our head? That's not good. It means his weight's right on your chest. How we learn to manage our opponent's body weight is a huge, huge part of the game. My contention is the elbow escape is your single best friend when it comes time to keeping your opponent's body weight off you. There's a bunch of other good ways too. We'll look at those later in this video. Let's start with the elbow escape. We looked at the half elbow escape as the first move we want to focus on. Now let's look at the double elbow escape. The double elbow escape was my main move from half guard, from blue belt all the way through to brown belt. It was the foundation of my half guard game. And to this day, it remains the single best weapon against someone who's got extraordinary passing pressure from half guard top. Whenever you go against someone who's got a very, very strong cross-face game, strong underhook game, ironically, the very game that I teach to my own students, you have to have effective elbow escape counters. And one of the very best is the double elbow escape. Let's have a look at it right now. Okay, first, what is a double elbow escape? A double elbow escape is two elbow escapes performed on the same side of your opponent's body. One is against his legs, and the second is against his arms. Normally, elbow escapes are performed first on the left side against the legs, and then on the right side against the legs. You put your opponent back in guard. That's a standard elbow escape you learn your first day in jiu-jitsu. A double elbow escape is two elbow escapes on one side, one against the lower body, one against the upper body. And its intention is to prevent your opponent putting you back or putting any kind of body weight on top of you and opening him up to your attacks. So here we are. We've got an opponent who's in what most people would call a very dominant upper body position. He's got all the ammunition that most people say creates half guard dominance. He's got crossface, he's got underhook, he's got his knee turned in, he's doing all the right things. But we can still be very effective here. We start with the same half elbow escape that we saw earlier in the video. Everything goes inside, I shift my hips out, I invert my knee, and I bring my knee to his hip. I cannot emphasize enough just what a lifeline this knee in front of his hip is, because that's what prevents him from putting forward pressure through the crossface. Every time he goes to put forward pressure, I can use my legs and hips to take that crossface off me. Look how without the knee, his crossface shoulder easily goes onto my neck, and you can hear my voice changing under the pressure. But the moment I hit a successful elbow escape and put my knee in, when he goes to apply that same pressure, I can effortlessly hold him off. His shoulder never gets to my head and neck. Okay, and you just kill the crossface right there. Okay, now as he goes to recover in this position, we're going to push away, and he has to put his hand on the floor. Why does he have to put his hand on the floor? Watch what happens when I apply my knee. Bring your knee in tight, chest. Look how as I push his knee back, he goes out of balance. If he doesn't do something, I'll just get up on top of it. So Mateus is not naive. He's a world champion. He's not going to just let me push his knee back and get on top. Okay. Once again, if my opponent was a complete nincompoop with no skills whatsoever, first of all, I shouldn't be in this position if he's a complete nincompoop. But let's say I put myself in this position. If I push down the mat and he just holds on one step over, and I'm on top. Okay. So Mateus knows that. He's not going to let that happen. So as I push back on the knee, he's going to put his hand on the floor. And that's exactly what gives me inside elbow position, elbow to elbow, not elbow to knee anymore, elbow to elbow. So I perform a second elbow escape on his arm. And as a result, we end up in the clamp. Two knees clamped around the head and one arm. When Mateus goes to pull his arm away, it's incredibly difficult. And as we saw in the Enter the System series, it's so easy from positions like this to go into triangles, arm locks, tegatames, etc., etc. So many submissions to work from there. Now, this is a beautiful, beautiful series. I'm not going to cover those submissions in the fundamental series. I believe they're beyond the scope of fundamentals. We're going into advanced submissions, but it doesn't take a rocket science to figure out. You got all kinds of triangle, armbar, Kimura attacks from these positions. This is incredible news to you as a viewer. Essentially what we're saying is you can have an opponent start in the single most dominant half guard top position and two movements, one elbow escape on his legs and one elbow escape on his arms, and now he is 100% defensive and you are attacking him. This is the best news I can ever give you from half guard bottom. You started with the worst possible half guard position, completely flattened out, him in upper body dominance. 2 moves later, 2 relatively easy moves later, you're 100% in control and attacking him. Okay, that life doesn't get any better than that in half guard bottom. So let's have a look at this again. Okay, I'm completely defensive here. He's got crossface, underhook, he's turned in, he's doing all the right things in half guard top. Other things being equal, he should be able to pass me here 9 times out of 10. So we bring everything in, shift out, invert the knee. There's the first elbow escape. We push back, forcing his hand to the mat. Again, if my opponent's an idiot and doesn't base out, we just go right over the top position. No one's that naive, so they're all going to base out like so. Now we go inside the elbow. And once again, I invert my knee. I elbow escape a second time on the same side. And we go up into the clamp. When he goes to pull away, my left knee makes it difficult. When he tries to drive forward, the right knee makes it difficult. There's no more crossface here. There's no more, his underhook has now become a liability. What was once a good thing is now a complete liability for him. And now it's so easy for us to go into a multitude of different attacks from this position. So many good things that we can do from a situation like this. Okay? This, as I said, is just an incredibly valuable addition to your arsenal. My whole gambit from blue belt to brown belt was just to go half guard bottom. People would think they were in a dominant position, one double elbow escape, and they were fighting for their lives out of triangles, kimuras, armbars, etc., etc. It doesn't get any better in terms of just switching what seems like a losing situation into a winning position than the double elbow escape. It is absolutely one of the most important half guard series in my personal arsenal, and one which I coach to my students relentlessly. All of them are strong in this double elbow escape. I'm going to show you from a different angle. You'll start just in like so. So again, Mateus has complete upper body dominance here, okay? From this position, we bring everything in, we shrimp out, we invert our knee, and push back. I hit a second elbow escape on the same side, and from here we go into the clamp with the head and shoulders completely trapped. When he goes to pull away from a situation like this, you know he's going to be leaving all kinds of submission opportunities in these positions once the head and shoulders get trapped like that, okay? From another angle. From here, Mateus has the underhook. He's flattened me out. I come in, shrimping out, knee and elbow together, pushing back, second elbow escape on the same side, and from here, we're in a fine attacking position. This double elbow escape gives us so many attacking opportunities. Because this fundamental series is mostly focused on positional attacks rather than submissions, I'm not going to go into details with the actual submissions. They were covered heavily in the Into the System series, but I will show you just some of the main avenues you can explore in a fundamentals class that come directly out of a double elbow escape. Let's have a look right now. Okay, Mateus has me pinned in half guard bottom. He's got what everyone would call dominant passing position. He's got everything. I'm completely flattened out. I'm 100% defensive. Okay, just two simple moves. First, elbow escape. Second, double elbow escape. From here, so many things. The first obvious one is Senkaku, the triangle. The second one, we take out his arm, invert our body into inverted Jujigatami. Another obvious one from here, we lock up straight into Kimura. Another obvious contender, pommel all the way through and go into Urigatami. Another obvious contender in this situation, from here, going through into omoplata variations. You can see there's a wealth of submission opportunities that come out of a double elbow escape. There's no finer example of a situation where you start off in what seems like a losing situation from bottom half guard, and through two simple, easy to learn motions, the double elbow escape, an elbow escape performed on the lower body and then the upper body on the same side, you end up in a wealth of attacking opportunities, submission holds, and in a situation where your opponent simply can't apply any effective body weight to you. Once you get to the clamp position, he has an underhook, but he has no effective way to use it because I'm in front of his shoulders with my knees. When he tries to put weight on me, it just takes him into the various submission holds that we favor. If he tries to pull away from us, it makes it easy for us to come up and start taking top position on our training partner and going into standing position, standing back up to our feet, taking us back, a myriad of attacking opportunities. The double elbow escape is one of the absolute best ways to turn what seems like a losing half guard situation into a decisive winning situation in just two relatively simple moves. Make it one of the foundations of your half guard journey. The half elbow escape and the double elbow escape are the first two series you want to master in that path of yours. Bottom out of what most people would call inferior upper body grips, where our opponent has some kind of dominant chest-to-chest position. If you look at the modern sport of jiu-jitsu, it's probably fair to say the majority of athletes, when they get to top half guard, are looking to get grips like this, where they're chest-to-chest on top of their opponent, and they have some variation of a crossface, some variation of an underhook. Okay, they might be using lapel variations. They might be going without the lapel. They might be putting a head on this side, but essentially they have a common ingredient of chest to chest position and underhook on the far side. Some feature crossface, some feature the head as a crossface, some feature a lapel reinforced crossface, but they all involve control of the head through some kind of cross-facing mechanism and control of the far arm and shoulder through the underhook. Okay, but understand, as popular and effective as this method is, it's not the only method of controlling the head and shoulders. A close second for popularity and effectiveness would probably be a reverse crossface. A reverse crossface is where your opponent goes away from a situation where he's on two knees, chest to chest, to one where he puts his arm over the top and elects to sit through, like so. Now, my knee comes off the mat. My opponent's head is controlled in a different way. Instead of a forward pressure driving on the jaw, we use an outside pressure, so that when my opponent tries to shrimp his head and shoulders away from me, the head is controlled by the back of my arm and elbow. Because my knee is off the floor, it's very easy for me to free the knee of my trap leg and go into strong passing sequences. This is a very effective and very popular method of controlling the half guard. It's particularly popular whenever you have an opponent who's good at securing underhooks from bottom position. So if I feel as the top player I cannot get an underhook and Mateusz Pommel's inside me, this would be an excellent time for us to use a reverse crossface and sit through like this and end up in a strong passing position like so. A natural question to ask is, what should I do if someone employs this method on me? You know by now that I'm a big advocate of the use of elbow escapes as your first line of defense whenever you're in half guard bottom and you're working from inferior position. I'm going to go with that now. We're going to use not an elbow escape, but a reverse elbow escape. Let's have a look at this. So we have Mateusz on top, and he is elected to take his arm across to a reverse crossface situation. He sits through, and now he's in a very strong passing position. Okay, if he frees his knee in this position, there's a very high likelihood now he'll be able to complete the pass and score his points. So our whole thing is, first, let's make sure we keep our half guard locked above his knee. I'm not asking you to lock a triangle, that's not essential, but my knees should be together and they should be above the knee. The moment my knees go below his knee and you can physically see your opponent's knee, that's not a good thing for me. Now, it's relatively easy for him to start his passing game. Okay, other things being equal, there are some exceptions to this rule. From here, we lock up above our training partner's knee. First things first, I'm going to get his knee to the mat. I'm going to do this through a knee lever action, where I take my training partner's leg and bring my feet down towards the floor and force his knee towards the mat. Even if Mateusz makes a strong stance here, it's a relatively simple thing to put his knee on the floor. I just make sure my knees are above his knee, and then from this position, look how I push everything in this direction. My knees pivot out, and his knee goes down towards the mat. This is going to enable us to get a grip on our training partner's tricep. I have a choice between physically holding the tricep, like so, and physically grabbing the gi. They're both excellent options. Okay, so I can go with a no-gi grip, like so, or I can grab a hold of the seam that runs down the back of my training partner's sleeve and use a grip 4 fingers and like so, either here or here. Okay, once we get this grip, we're going to go into a reverse elbow escape. This involves me exploding my body in the direction my hand is pointing and straightening out my right arm. It's currently bent. We're going to push everything by bridging out in this direction up onto my left shoulder. And as a result, we're able to push over just like so. Now, it's very hard for my opponent to put any kind of effective body weight on top of me. I bring my elbow up and I build my body up to an elbow. And as a result, I can now safely bring my knee through the gap and bring my knee back in front of my training partner and find myself squared up in a position where now when he tries to put weight on me, it's a difficult thing. And from here, we can go to work and bottom. Once again, we start off in what most people would say is a very tough situation to work from. My opponent puts a reverse crossface on and sits through. And as a result, it's easy for him now to push on my knee, free the knee of the trapped leg, and now there's a whole number of very effective passes he can use from this position. So our thing here is to start by getting his knee down on the floor. We do this by pushing our knees out in this direction. and getting his knee down to the mat. Now we come up and we get a hold of that reverse crossface. It's in a position where we can easily do so. Now we're going to give it what looks to be a bridging motion over our left shoulder and pushing his arm out with a stiff arm action just like so. The moment that's accomplished, we want to get weight off so we come up to an elbow. Now we're in the perfect position to bring our knee through, face our opponent square with our knees, and now we're in a position where his weight is no longer on top of us and we're in a good position to work from bottom. Let's have a look at it from another angle. Okay, half guard bottom. My opponent elects to sit through. We make sure our knees are up above his knee. We don't want his knee being visible to the camera here. We come up above the knee. We're going to put his knee on the floor by taking everything out in this direction. As he goes to take his arm out of this position, we put our hand in place, and now a strong lifting and pushing action, and kind of a stiff arm. It culminates with me on my elbow. Now we hit an elbow escape action in what would be the opposite direction we would normally do, hence a reverse elbow escape. We take our body out. Once my knee is free, I put it in front of his hip so that as he goes in to face us, we now have two knees in front of his body. We're no longer in a half guard situation compromised in the way we were. And as a result, it's an easy thing for us to go into our various attacks in bottom position and get his weight off us. One more angle. We have an opponent on top of us in a good sit-through position. First, get the knee down to the mat. Everything goes out in this direction. Now from here, as he goes to pull his arm away from us, we take his hand and start turning out like so. That stiff arm effect means when he tries to come back and face me, it's a difficult thing. He's fighting against the structure of his own body. Now I come up. Because I'm on my elbow, my lower body is relatively free, and we can easily face our opponent with two legs in front of him. It's a relatively easy thing for us to work effectively from bottom. This is an excellent way to use the elbow escaping motion in the opposite direction of usual to combat this very popular and very effective dominant passing position. Now, let's look at a popular method of controlling the upper body, the reverse underhook. First, let's define what is a reverse underhook. We all know what an underhook is. What's a reverse underhook? Okay. A basic underhook is any situation where I take one of my opponent's arms and put it underneath the opposite arm of my opponent. So my right arm goes under Mateus's left arm, like so. And this would be what everyone calls an underhook. A reverse underhook is where I put the same side arm underneath my opponent's arm. So against Mateus's left arm, I put my left arm underneath. So my arm is under his underhook, but it's the opposite arm of normal. Instead of being my right arm underneath his left for a conventional underhook, it's my left arm underneath his arm. I can do this with my elbow on the floor or my elbow off the floor. They're both highly effective. The beauty of reverse underhooks is they control both the far arm and the head at the same time, in much the same way as a reverse crossface. When Mateus goes to pull his arm free, it's not easy. The arm's well trapped. When he tries to move his head around, it's wedged in place. It's a good hold. It's very, very good. It also has the benefit that it generates a lot of back exposure on the part of my opponent. Okay? If I were able to free the knee of my trapped leg in situations like this, if he were to turn into me at this point, he would be exposing his back to my attacks. Okay? So it's a very useful grip, both in conventional half guards and in reverse half guard situations. Okay, it's a very, very useful way of working. So a natural question to ask is, well, what should I do if I find myself in this situation? Okay, if he's got this dominant reverse underhook grip, what should I do as the bottom player? Let's have a look at this right now. I'm sure it's no surprise to you to know that because it's an inferior grip, the number one response to it is always going to be some variation of the elbow escape. I'm sure you've picked up on that theme by now. Okay, we have Mateus in the reverse underhook position, just like so. And we are having a hard time getting our hips out of here. What's our response going to be? We're going to elbow escape, but there's a problem. Mateus is sitting right down on the floor on top of my hips. So when I go to elbow escape, it feels like he could easily just backstep out of here and pass my guard. Okay? So what are we going to do? Well, as always, we're going to take our leg and hook it in just like so. So we have one of our legs against one of his. I pull my leg back and there's tension in my leg. So if Mateus goes to kick his leg free, it's connected in there. I'm not just relaxed with my leg where he can step out any moment he feels like it. Okay? Secondarily, I'm going to take my elbow back and away, and I'm going to build up to an elbow, just like so. Now, from this position, I'm going to turn my hips down. Even if Mateus tries to keep his position here, it's hard for him because I can always bring my knee through the gap that I've created. As a result, put my knee here in front of Mateus's hips. And as a result, it's an easy thing for us to lengthen, come away, and start coming up into good attacking positions. The key to the reverse elbow escape, is always this idea of coming up to an elbow and creating space under our hips that we can slide through and get good attacking position. So there's our start position, just like so. Always from here. We want to start by creating some space. So I use a stiff arming effect using that belt grip. That's what keeps his hips away from it and creates an opportunity for me to start coming up to an elbow. Okay, from the elbow position, look how we start this action of turning our hips down towards the floor so that my knee can come free. It looks like there's back exposure on my part, but he can't use it because of my knee position. My knee goes right back in front of his hip. I keep my head higher than his head so that when we go into a battle for back position, you're always going to win. Your head is higher than his. And as a result, we can turn, close our legs over the top, throw the legs in place, and end up straight away on our training partner's back. One more time. We lock up on an opponent who's sitting directly over our hips. From here, we're always looking to come up just like so. Now, look how once I bring my knee through here, it's almost impossible for my opponent to take advantage and step over my body and pass. Even if he did step over my body, the other way, just step around in this direction, you're up on your base. And as a result, you can always use your height advantage to go in behind your opponent and take your opponent's back. There's the belt grip. It starts it all. We take our elbow back and away from our opponent and start building up to a base. Now, from the situation, if I turn my hips down, my knee comes out, and as a result, we're in good position to put pressure down, keeping his head low, and as a result, we can easily get to our opponent's back. This is an excellent way to use an elbow escape variation to once again win the lower body battle when we've lost the upper body battle. Okay, we've been through a lot of stuff with regards dealing with a situation where we start off in half guard bottom with an opponent who has superior grips and positioning on us. The general rule here is if we have someone who's down in half guard, the top player can turn this into a winning position provided he can control his opponent's head and shoulders and the direction of his hips and knees. Okay, that's going to be what makes me as the top player successful in this position. A large part of that has to do with control of the head through cross faces, reverse cross faces, and reverse underhooks, head blocks, etc. Okay. A lot of it has to do with the use of underhooks on the far side of my opponent's body that pin my opponent's shoulder down to the mat. Okay. If you can combine these two together, keep that shoulder on the mat and control his head, the top player is going to end up in very strong passing positions. We can also use sit-through motions to keep that shoulder and this hip down to the floor, walking across the body, and keep our opponent flat in positions where you can really assert a strong passing game. That's terrible news for the guy in the bottom position. And we're looking at bottom position. So what's our general response to this? The general response, the big theme that we're pushing, is that when you've lost the upper body battle, you've got to go downstairs and win the lower body battle. Only then can you come back upstairs, get into some kind of dominant upper body grip, and go on to win. The single best method of winning this tricky situation, the one that you will absolutely have to master if you're going to call yourself a strong half guard bottom player, is the elbow escape. Variations of the elbow escape are the number one method of pulling back a losing upper body situation into a win. It enables us to go downstairs, work at our opponent's hips and legs, get some kind of measure of lower body dominance so that we can come back upstairs, regain upper body dominance, and go on to win from half guard bottom. Let's quickly have a look at our gambits from here. Okay, the number one passing position in the sport, especially at fundamentals level, is always crossface and underhook. Once my opponent gets into a position like this is a very strong passing position. You see this at all levels of jiu-jitsu, not just beginners, but world championship matches too. It can be done using the gi. We'll look at that in detail in other parts of this video series. Right now, we're just looking at locked hands. In situations like this, we've got to go downstairs. We've got to start elbow escaping. The big key to elbow escaping in these situations is the use of the inverted knee, where I invert my knee and point it directly at my opponent's knee and form a strong frame that gets our knee in front of his hip. The moment we get in front of his hip here, it kills his crossface. When he tries to use his crossface and drive into me, I can drive right back into his hips and make his crossface feel very feeble indeed. And as a result, we can easily take inside position. Now you're inside that crossface. We can go double elbow escape. Now there's no way he can get to a crossface. And now his underhook, which was such a good thing a few moments ago, is now a liability to him. His underhook that was once controlling me is no longer able to keep my shoulder on the mat. And as a result, becomes a liability as we go into various kinds of submissions, etc., etc. We can go into a basic half elbow escape, where we just put the elbow inside, we invert the knee, we bring the knee in front of the hip, and we can take a more cautious kind of response where we come inside our training partner's arms, and from here we could, for example, just slip legs in and go back to other, perhaps more secure forms of guard than the precarious half guard we were just in. We've seen this idea that if someone takes a reverse crossface and goes over the top of my body like so, in situations like this, we're going to hit reverse elbow escapes, where we bring his knee down towards the floor. We get a hold of our training partner's tricep, back of the arm, and from here we hit an elbow escape in what seems to be the wrong direction, coming out like so. And from this position, the knee comes in. Once we get knees in front of the hips, now we're in a position where we can manage our opponent's body weight so much more successfully. We saw if our opponent has the reverse underhook, and from here we lock on to our training partner's lower body, courtesy of the belt and hips. Now it's all about building height, where we come up to an elbow, just like so. I point my body down towards my training partner's body, and as a result, my knee comes easily around the corner, okay? From situations like this, once our knee comes in front of our training partner, we're going to go in and start lancing our training partner's body up and generate back exposure, where we can start to take advantage of the situation and work much more effectively than before. In this fashion, the use of the elbow escape is the single best way to take what seems to be losing upper body situations, employ the elbow escape, win the lower body situation, and come back later to win the upper body.